Messiah, Saturdays 2 p.m. Central on AFR.
This is American Family Radio, a listener-supported ministry of the American Family Association.
American Family News, I'm Rusty P. The Senate is moving forward with President Trump's cabinet picks. Some nominees could face some pushback, but Republicans, like Louisiana's John Kennedy, are confident.
I expect most, if not all, of them to be confirmed. Why? Number one, the president's dug in like a tick. He wants these people. But number two, you've got to remember, these confirmation hearings matter.
ICE beginning to crack down on illegal aliens nationwide this past weekend. Alexis McAdams has more.
Migrants accused of trafficking guns, drugs, and a slew of other crimes. We want to start with what happened out in Colorado. This was over the weekend in the Colorado area. They had those agents on the ground there raiding a party in the Denver area, targeting drug trafficking and gang members as part of an ongoing investigation into a Venezuelan gang. We're talking about 50 migrants arrested in this bust. Many have ties to the South American gang, Tren de Aragua. ICE was there to run background checks, and then law enforcement boarded up those migrants onto that bus. Just yesterday, ICE says 956 people were arrested, 554 had detainers that were lodged.
Vice President J.D. Vance was pressed on grocery prices during an interview on CBS's Face the Nation Sunday, arguing that several of President Donald Trump's first moves in office would help bring down prices for Americans.
Prices are going to come down, but it's going to take a little bit of time, right? The president has been president for all of 5 days. I think that in those 5 days, he's accomplished more than Joe Biden did in 4 years.
When do consumers actually get to touch and feel a difference in their lives?
Well, Margaret, how does bacon get to the grocery store? It comes on trucks that are fueled by diesel fuel. If the diesel's way too expensive, the bacon's going to become more expensive. How do we grow the bacon? Our farmers need energy to produce it. So if we lower energy prices, we are going to see lower prices for consumers, and that is what we're trying to fight for.
The White House announced this morning that all service members who were kicked out for refusing a mandate to take the COVID shot will be reinstated with full rank and back pay. This is welcome news for Florida Congressman and retired Army Ranger Brian Mast, who introduced the bill to have service members reinstated.
Great day for Patriots, great day for our service members, my brothers and sisters in arms. And let's not forget, you go back in time, and it wasn't just the military, it was other government agencies as well, where they were washing essentially conservatives that were raising their hands saying, hey, I don't want to take this vaccine. They were washing them out of government, washing them out of West Point and Naval Academy, Air Force, Coast Guard, Merchant Marine Academies, washing them out from being on the next promotion boards for first sergeants, sergeants majors, or officers. And they were creating a system where the ones that were going to be giving promotion to the next classes of individuals were all going to be those that didn't say, no, I'm not a conservative, and you know, I'm okay with everything that you're doing right now. That's what was taking place.
There's more criticism of those in the medical community who insist that gender manipulation procedures should be carried out on young people who are confused about their sexuality. Bob Kellogg explains.
Lori Higgins of Breakthrough Ideas believes the more the public is apprised of the dangers of transgender drugs and surgery, the more the trans medical complex comes crashing down.
In this futile quest to become the opposite sex, they want to be able to continue making money off this. And so they're trying to find other justifications. And the one they've landed on is, well, it doesn't really matter if it makes them healthy or not.
Dutch psychiatrist Dr. Annelou de Vries contends transitioning is simply a journey of discovery, but Higgins says minors are not capable of making life-altering discoveries.
The journey should be, how do I come to accept my biological sex, my anatomy, everything that goes with it? How do I reconcile these disturbing, disordered feelings I have?
In an opinion piece for the Christian Post, Brandon Showalter writes it's becoming evident that these trans cultists are desperate to avoid accountability for the medical train wreck they're witnessing. I'm Bob Kellogg.
And the Federal Reserve is nearly certain to keep its key interest rate unchanged at its policy meeting this week, just a few days after President Trump said he would demand lower rates. For American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh.
Streaming.afa.net has now become AFA Stream, and you can find it at stream.afa.net. You see, we removed the letters ing. Our experts have determined that eliminating those 3 keystrokes, multiplied over hundreds of thousands of AFA Stream visits, could reduce the national debt and maybe increase the gross domestic product. AFA Stream, formerly streaming.afa.net. Improvements to the economy are purely theoretical. Welcome to Today's Issues, offering a Christian response to the issues of the day. Here's your host, Tim Wildman, President of the American Family Association.
Hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome to Today's Issues on the American Family Radio Network for this Monday, January the 27th, 2025. Thanks for listening. We thank you every day for listening to American Family Radio. I'm Tim Wildman with Ed Battagliano. Good morning, Brother Ed.
Good morning, Tim.
And Fred Jackson. How you doing, Fred?
I'm doing wonderful.
All right, so a lot to talk about today. Hope everybody had a nice weekend. I think for a while at least, I'm not completely through traveling. I'm a traveling man here. Been in the car. You gonna join us, Ed? Or?
Yes. Sorry.
He's ordering
pizza. It is work related. It's about a meeting. Yes, folks. I was.
If everybody just talk amongst yourselves as Ed texts during the show here, just tell us when you're through texting.
There, you now have my full attention. It was about a meeting. I was
trying to talk to you, and we weren't making any kind of connection here. So I was going to go. Guys, Fred and I'll do the show, dude.
You know, it is. Some people can multitask.
Yeah.
I really can't.
I can't either. I have to stop now in my tracks to text.
Yes.
Definitely stop. I can't walk and text, or I'll end up, walking off the side of a building or something.
I've actually taken the elevator. We only have 2 floors here, so generally I just take the stairs.
Yeah.
Keep getting my steps. But I will take the elevator if I have to text. I don't trust myself to walk up or down the stairs and text at the same time. It's getting pretty ugly. Really.
Anyway, so Alice and I, we drove to Florida and back like twice. This is the last month.
That's a long trip too. Was it 10 or 11 hours?
Yeah. It depends on what part of Florida you go to. Yeah, one of them was 10 hours. Then we drove to Thursday night. We were in. We went over for Little Rock for an event with some of our supporters, and then we drove to Chattanooga and back Saturday for a wedding.
Oh my!
In one day. I told my friends, who I love and respect, we've been friends for 35 years, so we needed to go to this wedding for their daughter. And but I told Allison, I said, you know what? If we drive 4 hours one way, and we're going to drive 8 hours in one day for a wedding, the food better be good.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? Or I'm going to have to say something.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And so fortunately,
the food was great.
Reception.
Oh, yeah. No,
listen. Food.
8 hours.
That's why we go to weddings. Most of us, let's be
friend.
honest about it. If we got, you know what I'm saying? We go for the reception.
I've just started becoming just incredibly honest as I get older. I just tell my wife, I don't really care for those people.
Right.
I don't like them. Do we have to go? Even to be polite. No, I don't. I don't do that.
Anyway, so, while I was on the road back and forth to wherever I was going President Trump's been just dealing every hour on the hour. President Trump is shaking the world up, isn't he? Huh?
He is a wheeler and a dealer. And I'm going to be honest, I've never seen anything like this. The whirlwind of activity coming from that guy. And some people have taken to describing it as flooding the zone, which I know it may have multiple applications. I know it's a football term when you send several wide receivers into the same area, hope for some confusion on the defensive side of the ball, and get a big completion. And that seems like what the president is doing, flooding the zone. The news media and the Democrats cannot harp on one thing like they typically do and make it sound like the end of the world, because the world has moved on to 5 other things. After, they may be outraged for 30 minutes, but then Trump's got something else going and they have to move on and cover it.
Yeah.
It's pretty extraordinary.
Fred, what happened last Friday? A Thursday or Friday.
Last Thursday or Friday?
Whenever it was Pete Hegseth.
Well, it was late Friday night.
Okay.
When he was confirmed. Now, there were 3 Republicans who voted against the confirmation of Pete Hegseth
to be Secretary of Defense.
Yes, the expected, Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, but Mitch McConnell also. So that caused Vice President Pence to come in and have to do the deciding vote. So I'm thinking about this. I guess there is an element inside the Republican Party that I would equate to Neville Chamberlain. They're just, they don't like some of what's in Pete Hegseth's background, even though he has denied a lot of it, even though he said he's accepted Jesus Christ as his personal Savior and Jesus Christ has changed his life. That didn't mean anything to these individuals. They decided to vote against him. But nonetheless, today, Pete Hegseth is now Secretary of Defense.
Yeah, it really doesn't matter whether you pass by 1 or 100.
Nope.
You got all the power.
Yes.
In the office. Secretary of Defense is now the title for Pete Hegseth. So he did pass, and he is in that job as of today. He was sworn in.
Yes.
He was sworn in by Vice President Vance the other day.
Yes.
And you know what? I made the comment to some folks. I said, there are millions of military people, families, active members, veterans around the country today and some around the world who are crying tears of joy at the announcement that Pete Hegseth is the Secretary of Defense, and it's the end of all this woke garbage being just slammed down the throats of these military folks who can't do anything about it.
Yes.
And so that's over.
Yes.
That stops. In fact, you couldn't pick a more ardent opponent of that kind of thing, of the wokeness, the what would you call it? Just the weak approach to defense is what I call it.
Yeah, I mean, the woke, the DEI, all those
Yeah.
kinds of things that we've been using, diversity, equity, and inclusion.
That's over.
Those were all. I think part of the frustration was, as people have said many times, we've said it on this show, the job of the military, whether you wish the world was the way it is or not, the job of the U.S. military, as somebody once said, is to kill people and break things. It's not a petri dish. You're not supposed to be doing, social science experiments using the military as your laboratory. And that's the way it was increasingly feeling to families who had members of their family going back to the Civil War, serving in the U.S. military. These were families that were proud to serve. Not everybody did, but there was always a member or two of the family who was serving. And we kept hearing from people who were a part of this. I know myself of someone who was in the Marines, who was a Marine Corps pilot, who just got out because this individual had retired but was helping train. And he said, I just got out. I could not stand the woke garbage that was going on. And a lot of family members, a lot of families said, we're not sending our young men to serve in a military where they're going to teach them this stuff.
Yeah.
It's very bad. We were missing all of our recruitment goals for all the branches of the military.
Yeah. Well, speaking of our military, that is the big story this morning, that President Trump, just 1 week as number 47, overnight, he let it be known, and for some reason, he went to Peter Doocy at Fox to release this information.
They're going to be getting along just great.
I think so. But anyway, the news this morning, folks, is that those 8,000 roughly members of the United States military across the various branches who refused to take the COVID shot, they were thrown out of the military. Thrown out. This morning, this is a promise that candidate Trump made, that he would offer to those people reinstatement at full salary. And
with
that
back pay.
With back pay. And that announcement came this morning. This is incredible news. Florida Congressman Brian Mast has been one of those who has been really pushing for this. Obviously, he welcomes this great news this morning. Cut number 2.
Great day for Patriots, great day for our service members, my brothers and sisters in arms. And let's not forget, you go back in time, and it wasn't just the military, it was other government agencies as well, where they were washing essentially conservatives that were raising their hands saying, hey, I don't want to take this vaccine. They were washing them out of government, washing them out of West Point and Naval Academy, Air Force, Coast Guard, Merchant Marine Academies, washing them out from being on the next promotion boards for first sergeants, sergeants majors, or officers. And they were creating a system where the ones that were going to be giving promotion to the next classes of individuals were all going to be those that didn't say, no, I'm not a conservative, and you know, I'm okay with everything that you're doing right now. That's what was taking place.
Joe Biden created an absolutely horrible environment within our military, which goes to your point, guys. You know, recruitment was down dramatically, especially amongst what we would call military families, because I think dads were saying to their daughters and their sons, hey, don't go in the military now.
Right.
It's going to be a horrible experience. I have some personal background information from the military, from an individual who was in charge of bringing people along in the military. He basically was told, hey, you can't offend anybody anymore. If you make somebody sad, you're a bad guy.
Yeah.
And we're talking about drill sergeant. You know, it was the environment became so sick. They lowered the standards.
Right.
They created a whole new class of individuals who physically were not able even to get through boot camp. So they put them into another camp so they could lose a little bit of weight, hopefully, so they could go to boot camp. This is how bad it became. Just absolutely ridiculous. And don't forget, they also the military started pointing the finger if, ooh, you have a tattoo that looks suspicious to us. Maybe you're perhaps one of those right-wing radicals.
Right.
We don't want you. Oh, you're one of those fundamental Christians. We don't want you here.
Well, because the Biden administration was saying that conservatives were a threat to our democracy.
Yes.
So I can see where, and with that kind of mentality, you'd look at someone, Pete Hegseth had to defend his tattoo of the Jerusalem cross, which is over 1,000 years old, has nothing to do with white supremacy.
No, and listen, let me ask you this. I think, so the big news is, as you said this morning, President Trump has announced that those who were fired by the military under Biden for not taking the COVID vaccine shot,
yes,
they were fired. I mean, it doesn't matter how many years they'd been in the service, nothing. What their job was, they were gone because they didn't take the experimental shot.
Mm-hmm.
That's still unbelievable to me and just shameful. That's tyrannical. I don't know what other words I can use stronger, but that's just and it put our country in a bad way because it, how many of them were there?
8,000.
8,000. And so he said, so Trump's, Biden said, get rid of them, kick them out. And so now President Trump has reinstated them.
Yeah, if they want to come back.
If they want to come back, I doubt.
Some of them, probably most of them have moved on.
But I wonder if you can go, hey, I'll take that offer. Put me back where I was and then stay there a week and then resign. That way you get your full back pay.
Yeah.
What about that? Is that dishonest?
Yeah, that'd be dishonest. They should be financially compensated. I don't know whether you get all your back pay or not, but they should be financially compensated for
they were kicked out on their ear.
They joined the military in good faith and then were treated like this. There should be some money coming back that they would have just gotten their pay kind of thing. So
yeah. Anyway, so it's more of a statement than anything else, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, well, good for President Trump, and he kept a promise. With respect to these military folks.
Another big story this morning.
Wait, there's more.
There's more. President Trump was golfing yesterday.
Yeah.
But on the third hole, we're told, he was having a conversation with the president of Colombia. Because the president of Colombia
Not
said...
Columbia University.
Oh, no.
No, president of Colombia, the country.
The country, yes. The president of Colombia said, you can't send those illegal immigrants back to us. We're not going to accept them. So Trump says, okay, we're going to pile on the tariffs on your coffee and flowers. We get a lot of coffee and flowers from Colombia. And it didn't take too long that the president of Colombia said, okay, white flag, it's all right. You bring them down. In fact, the president of Colombia said, I'll even send my private jet up to help bring these illegals back to Colombia. That's from the third hole of the golf course to the eighth hole, this was all resolved.
It's about an hour.
Yeah, about an hour.
Hour and a half, maybe.
Yeah. Monica De La Cruz, who is a Republican from Texas, says Trump was showing great strength by basically telling Colombia this is the way it's going to be. Cut number 5.
It's unacceptable that the far-left Colombian government would not take their own citizens back. President Trump in the White House means making America strong again and making America respected again. And that's exactly what President Donald J. Trump did yesterday, is he showed that America, the United States, is not going to back down, that we're going to send back illegal criminals to the countries and reappropriate them back to their countries, and the governments better take them back.
You know, I'm sure there'll be some on the left who will accuse Trump of bullying a smaller country, but he didn't stick an aircraft carrier off the coast and say, give us the coffee for free. He was just telling them, take your own people back. Mm-hmm. I mean, this isn't bullying. Anyway, you cut this. He was using strong arm tactics to get Colombia to do what they should have done at the beginning. Venezuela was sending on purpose.
Yes.
They emptied their prisons and sent criminals to the United States. And I hope President Trump is just as hardline with Venezuela if they say we don't want them back, because they shouldn't be our problem. Yeah. They should be Venezuela's and Colombia's problem. You want them, you put them in prison. Yeah. You do something with them.
Well, I mean, he's Donald Trump's only been president for a week, less than a week, I guess, if you look at the hours. However, he is doing exactly what he said he would do. There were images last week of young men who were in chains boarding American military aircraft to take them to, I think it was Guatemala. These were flights down to Guatemala. Within hours, actually, after Trump became president, he had already started this. Hundreds have already been picked up and are being sent out of the country. Trump's border czar, Tom Homan, was interviewed on the weekend on ABC's This Week with host Martha Raddatz. And he put it very plainly to her. These are people who have broken the law to enter this country. Yes, we are justified for sending them home. Cut number 7.
We got military on the border, not only helping us with departure flights on military planes, but they're helping to build infrastructures.
So is this what we will see every single day, ending in what the president has promised is millions and millions being deported?
Yes, but you're going to see the numbers steadily increase, the number of arrests nationwide, as we open up the aperture.
When you talk about the aperture opening, the estimates of perhaps those who have been convicted or arrested in the past, 700,000 to over 1 million. So after you do that, then you go after everybody who is there illegally.
If you're in the country illegally, you're on the table, because it's not okay to violate laws of this country. You got to remember, every time you enter this country illegally, you violated a crime under Title 8, United States Code 1325. It's a crime. So if you're in the country illegally, you got a problem.
If you got a what now? Oh, illegally?
Yeah, if you're in the country illegally, you got a problem.
You got a problem.
Well, listen, they're going, they being ICE and the Department of Homeland Security, they're tracking these violent criminals down, and they're rounding them up and putting them on airplanes and sending them back. I would say this. I know that's the first step, and that's what President Trump, is doing, and his team there. I got a little bit of a question about sending people back where they're probably going to be just let free. I don't know if that's the case or, I don't know if that's the case or not. But, I mean, these people committed violent acts, violent criminal. Well, do they have to be guilty of something? Because they just have to be gang members. Do you know?
I know that
to be qualified as getting on the
apparently
plane.
they're going into Colorado. I'm talking about ICE to try to round up these gang members. So I'm not sure. Tom Homan was talking about the aperture, talking about like on a camera, how wide it opens up. I'm not sure what what criteria they're using, but certainly people who have been arrested for crimes. I don't know whether they've all had trials.
Yeah.
So but they're here illegally, so we certainly have the right to send them back anyway. We can say, listen, we don't have to give you a trial to find out if you're guilty. You're here illegally. You were arrested for this. You're going.
It was funny reading the governor of Illinois. He's a Democrat, governor of Illinois. He was saying that, if they're here illegally and they're committing acts of violence or, I guess drugs and that kind of things involved in drug gang activity, we're for getting rid of them. We are for deporting them. But then he says, well, the rest of them, though, we're going to protect them. Did you read that?
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm going like, scratch your head.
Governor Pritzker.
Then don't complain about the cost of housing all these folks and taking care of them if you're going to say they're all welcome here unless they committed a crime here.
That's not reading the room, okay?
Right.
American people are having economic hardship, the vast majority, and they do not want the federal government using its resources or the state using their resources for people who aren't supposed to be here. Now, if everyone was doing well and prices were down and people are able to buy houses and they're able to do this and they're doing that, maybe the American people might say, all right, we've got some extra room, we've got some extra resources, let's let them stay. I don't think Pritzker and whatever Democrats are wanting to keep people here who came in illegally, I don't think that's reading the room. I think the American people are tired of government waste. When you get $700 from the federal government after your house burned down in Los Angeles County, you're not in a mood to say, okay, fine, we'll just start handing out EBT cards and as you're always talking about, Tim, a gift card to Subway. Okay, that's stuff that should be staying here for people who pay taxes and who live here, who are legal.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, so the two takeaways from this half hour. One is President Trump told the military he's offered a compensation and a take back for the military that Biden fired for not taking the experimental COVID vaccine shot.
Mm-hmm.
Who will take that and who won't, with back pay.
Yep,
with back pay. And the second thing is that he told the president of the country of Colombia, you either take our planes. Well, I guess the Colombian president sending his own plane. You either take back the criminals or the people we have that we don't feel like should be in our country that are from Colombia, which the Colombian president yesterday said, we're not doing that. We're not taking them back. They need to be flown in non-military planes because they need to have dignity. I was reading all this stuff that he said. And so Trump is on hole 3. He gets to hole 8. By hole 8, after Trump said, oh, yeah, well, you will take them back or we're going to slap you with 25% tariffs on all your products. And
your ambassadors can't come in the country. They had their visas revoked.
So it took him about from hole 3 to hole 8, being a golfer. I know that you're talking about an hour and 15 minutes.
That's like, okay, you have to the second half of the game to get this done.
Depending on whether you got a slow foursome in front of you, in which case it might take a little longer. But anyway, the point is Trump was out on the golf course on his phone doing international business, and as Elvis would say, TCOB.
I like the way I characterize Trump right now. He's in full Hulk mode.
Yes, he is.
Smash.
That's right. We'll be back momentarily. Stay with us.
It's my turn.
Here is your host for My Turn, Don Wildman.
A man in the Old West was being tried for stealing a horse. You need to remember now that stealing a horse in the Old West was a very grave and serious offense. A person could be hung if found guilty of such a deed. It so happened that the man was accused of stealing a horse from another man in that town whom no one liked. The man whose horse had been stolen had always made it a point to get the best of any person with whom he had any dealings. He had never tried to do anything good for anyone other than himself. Consequently, the man whose horse had been stolen didn't have a single friend in the entire community. Well, the case was tried and presented to the jury. The evidence against the accused man was pretty strong. After about 30 minutes of deliberation, the jury returned to the court chambers. "Gentlemen of the jury, have you reached a verdict?" the judge asked. The chairman of the jury stood up. "Yes, we have, Your Honor," he replied. "What is your verdict?" inquired the judge. There were a few moments of silence, and then the chairman spoke. "We find the defendant not guilty if he will return the horse." Well, after the judge had silenced the laughter in the courtroom, he admonished the jury. "I cannot accept that verdict. You will have to retire until you reach another verdict," said the judge. So the jury went back into their room to deliberate toward another verdict. Now, no member of the jury had any particular liking for the man whose horse had been stolen. At one time or another, he had gotten the best of each of them. About an hour passed before the jury could reach another verdict. They re-entered the courtroom. They took their place in the jury box, and the courtroom grew silent. "Gentlemen of the jury," began the judge, "have you reached a verdict?" Well, the chairman of the jury stood up. "Yes, we have, Your Honor," he replied. "What is your verdict?" asked the judge. You could have heard a pin drop. Everyone eagerly awaited the verdict. The chairman read the decision by the 12 good men tried and true. "We find the defendant not guilty, and he can keep the horse." The courtroom burst into laughter. Well, I guess the moral of the story is that it pays to be interested in people other than yourself. If you spend your life trying to take advantage of others, never caring about them in any way except what you can get from them or what they can do for you, you will end up a loser like the man who lost his horse. If you desire a friend, then you had better be a friend. If you desire for other people to help you, then you had better help other people. If you desire justice at the hands of others, then you had better practice justice toward them. Regardless of what you may think, the old biblical admonition is true. We do reap what we sow.
This has been My Turn with Don Wildman, a production of the American Family Association.
Hello, everyone. Tim Wildman here with American Family Association and American Family Radio. Hey, our tours for 2025, our spiritual heritage tours of Washington, D.C. and Williamsburg and Boston, they're filling up. They're halfway full now. And we've never had a response quite like this. So what I'm saying is if you want to go with us this year to either Colonial Williamsburg, which includes Jamestown and Yorktown, or Washington, D.C. and all the sites of our nation's capital, including Mount Vernon, or if you want to go with us to Boston and see the Freedom Trail and all the sites of the greater Boston area. If you want to go on these trips with us this year, it's time to check into the information and register so that you make sure you're on one of our tours, the one you want to go on, obviously. So go to the website wildmangroup.com, WILDMON group.com. Hope to see you on one of these in 2025.
You will seek me and find me when you seek me with all your heart. Jeremiah 29:13.
American Family Radio. This is today's issues. Email your comments to comments@afr.net. Past broadcasts of today's issues are available for listening and viewing in the archive at afr.net. Now, back to more of today's issues.
And welcome back, everybody, to Today's Issues on the American Family Radio Network. Today's Issues, the name of this year's show. And For the United States of America, it's all good right now. Fred Jackson, our news reporter, has told us some what President Trump calls common sense things that have been taking place the last week or so since the president was sworn in.
Yep.
And so it's anyway big. Every day's a new big thing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It is. We talked about in the first segment. He's kind of flooding the zone. I think that the part of the difference between this term of office for the president and coming in winning in 2016, coming into office in 2017, is that President Trump knows how the games are played in D.C. So he had people who were ready for day one, minute one, with things that they were going to do. Remember his first day, he signed whatever it was, 200 executive orders. Those were all ready to go, just awaited his signature. So he is constantly doing things and responding in a forceful manner. And as Fred said in the first segment, or maybe it was during the break, he is doing what he said he was going to do.
Yeah.
So not really any surprises here.
Someone said, too, he's having a good time. In the first term, he was being pummeled.
Yes.
Almost from day one.
No one likes that.
Yes. But this time around, they say he's having a really good time because he's settled in on what he's going to do, and he's not going to be stopped by negative media reports and all of that.
And he's got his own people.
Yes.
Remember, the first week of his first term, and starting again in 2017, there were two major leaks after phone calls. One was, I think, with the Australian prime minister, and there was another one too. But leaks from within his own administration. So there were people who were in place who were part of the quote-unquote resistance. Yeah. That's what the Democrats themselves called it. And he was blindsided by a lot of that. And he's firing people left and right. He is giving them new quote-unquote opportunities to work in different places. We'll be talking about some of that here on this show. And so he means business, and like you said, he's having a good time doing it.
It's going to be interesting. I think he set a deadline, February 19th, for everybody to come back to work. They've been working from home since COVID 3 years ago.
What, the federal government employees in D.C.?
Yes.
Yeah, there was members of the Trump administration who went to their offices, and they said, I was shocked. There's only like half the people actually at work.
Yeah.
Everyone else was working remotely.
Yep.
Yeah. As was Biden. He was. I shouldn't say that. That was bad. I take that back. Yeah.
Well,
you're okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm okay with it.
All right. I don't know.
There were parts of his mind that were certainly remote. Okay, so we
That's
just
what
stop.
That's what
We
I was
should
going to
just
say,
stop.
but you said it.
Yeah, I should.
Yeah, we
you're
stop
right.
right there.
There's no need. He
No.
lost.
He lost.
He's going to go eat
Going
ice
to the
cream, enjoy his
he's
millions.
Going to the vineyards of Northern California.
He's going to enjoy those millions of dollars he's saved off his minuscule presidential salary or wherever else it came from.
All right. You're listening to today's issues on the American Family Radio Network. Well, joining us in studio is Dr. Andy Miller, who's the president of Wesley Biblical Seminary in Jackson, Mississippi, and with their student bodies nationally and international. Andy, good morning to you.
Thanks, Tim. It's so good to be here.
Welcome to our studio here. Tell us about Wesley Biblical Seminary.
Yeah, well, we've been so thankful to be partners with AFA-AFR for many years. We've been around for 50 years. We started in a double-wide trailer on borrowed land south of Jackson, and we started with a conviction that there were people in the evangelical tradition who were sometimes in Methodist traditions or Wesleyan tradition, and we wanted to hold to the inerrancy of Scripture and the reality that people can experience God's grace in this life to be transformed in such a way they can become more like Christ. And so because we did that, we were sometimes seen as a little too conservative for the United Methodist Church, which would have been the largest tradition in the Wesleyan tradition. So for 50 years, we were never approved by the United Methodist Church.
You mean to ordain pastors?
To ordain pastors, that's right. Yeah, we were accredited by all the Association of Theological Schools, the Association of Biblical Higher Education. So all of our academics were solid, but we could never help ordain pastors or get people
Why were
ready.
you considered too conservative for the United Methodists?
Well, and sadly, they had started from the very beginning with theological pluralism at its foundation.
I don't like that word.
I know it.
I don't even like that word. Theological pluralism at its foundation. Are you talking about the Methodists?
That's right, United Methodists.
Okay, I grew up in United Methodist Church.
I know.
So I know what you're talking about. And
It's a very large denomination.
Yeah, well, yeah.
At the time.
At the time, yeah, second largest Protestant denomination in America behind the Southern Baptist Convention. But the trailblazing of the gospel in America,
absolutely,
by Methodists before they were United Methodists, just Methodists, John Wesley, Charles Wesley, Francis Asbury,
yes.
Is quite frankly unparalleled. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
In Protestant Christianity, at least, I mean, one time there was a Methodist church in every county in America. So the famous circuit riders.
Yes, yeah.
I mean, so the tradition of spreading the gospel of Christ in North America is you could go back and say to the Methodists they were a large part of that. But as you say, as oft happens with the organizations, they
Yes.
get too big, maybe too bloated, and then they start compromising on their core convictions, and then they fade into. I mean, this is something.
No, that's right.
Repeats itself.
Yeah,
right?
that's what's happened. So, like, they started with this, and they started to form institutions. They want to be respectable,
right?
But we want to be connected, and we are connected to that tradition of
Right.
Francis Asbury that brought the gospel all over the United States. And so, what happened is they formed these institutions, large academic institutions that ended up putting themselves in a place where they were unfaithful.
Right.
And so it became a bureaucracy. So we've always been a non-denominational school, but we could never get to the table because we weren't a part of the good old boys network there.
Well, and I do want to encourage people that those faithful members of the United Methodist Church, many of whom have come out of that denomination, are remaining faithful to the faith once handed down to the saints, and are connecting. What's interesting is through this whole process, and I remember coming here to work at AFA in '96, but some of this had started happening in the early '90s. I remember Bishop's Sprague, I think, up in maybe Illinois, that part of the Midwest. These people who were making huge decisions for the denomination, but leaving biblical Christianity. But what's interesting is that as that process has unfolded, the American Methodists who are faithful are connecting with faithful Methodists around the globe.
Amen. Yes,
And,
absolutely.
and so from Africa, for example.
Yes, yeah.
And so those connections, it seems like God is honoring the faithfulness of believers all over the world. So
Tell us
though,
your-
I'm sorry. I was going to say, even though institutions may kind of calcify and turn away and or stop being faithful, no longer being faithful, God honors people who remain faithful to the
Amen.
faith.
Dr. Andy Miller, president of Wesley Biblical Seminary, is in studio with us. Just real quickly, tell us your story. Where are you from? How'd you come to know the Lord and all that?
Thank you. Yeah. I'm really thankful to grow up in a Christian family. I was 6 generations in the Salvation Army. My grandfather was a leader of the Salvation Army in the United States, and
You moved around?
I moved all over the Midwest. I went to seminary, ended up serving in the Salvation Army myself for 15 years all across the South. I married a Southerner. My wife's from South Georgia. And so even though my accent doesn't fit in here, I've been here most of my adult life.
And you know what peanut farmers do then.
Absolutely. There you go.
Yeah.
So I came to Christ there, and I just felt a call to preach and then to serve the church. And so anyway, that's a part of where God's led me.
Okay, who do you want to? You're here to do devotion for our staff here and visit with us, but you also are here as an ambassador for Wesley Biblical Seminary. give you one opportunity here to make your pitch to our listeners. Who needs to contact you?
Yeah, absolutely. So what we do is we're sending out trusted leaders for faithful churches. And there is, like you said, this remnant of people who've come together who are faithful to the gospel in that Methodist tradition. And not just, we're not only restricted to Methodists, we're a non-denominational school, but for people who are looking for faithful pastors, I hope that they'll look to Wesley Biblical Seminary for resources, but also people who are interested in going deeper in their faith, not just those who want a bachelor's, master's, or doctoral degree. We're glad to do that. We have lay initiatives. You can find out more about us at wbs.edu. So we have a real sense that God has equipped us for this moment to train pastors, to train leaders, so they're ready to serve faithful churches all over the world.
Well, there's a lot of
WBS.edu.
WBS.edu.
There's a lot of pastors who are leaving the ministry because of stress and strain. Right. So there may be people out there listening who go, I've felt a calling to serve the church. Yes. Wesley Biblical Seminary,
WBS.edu
might be a place to look to get some training.
We're fully available online. We have all of our classes, but you have live interaction with a professor via Zoom. But we have a campus course in the Jackson area where people can come. But we've had amazing growth in the last year and a half. With the emergence of the Global Methodist Church,
Amen.
We've added more than 400. So we have 430 Global Methodist Church pastors right now.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you, Andy. Appreciate it, my friend.
Thanks Tim. God bless you. Yeah,
all right,
appreciate
it very much. That's Dr. Andy Miller, president of Wesley Biblical Seminary, stopping in to join us. He's in Tupelo today visiting with some of our team.
You know, God is working, and Christians need to remember that. It's easy. Now, of course, a lot of Christians have a lot more optimism now because the cultural Marxists didn't win, okay? But there's still a lot of work to be done, and people need to remember that God is working behind the scenes and doing things that you don't hear about in the news media. Sometimes you know nothing about, but God, we had last summer, remember we had revivals breaking out on college campuses around the country, Ohio State even, but, some Asbury, I think, as well.
What do you mean by that, Ohio State even?
Well, what I mean is, it wasn't
Notre Dame fan or something. You still harbor resentment for the ball game?
I do. That's not where this is coming
That's
from.
That's what it sounded like.
Okay, so let me explain.
Reset that.
I'm going to reset. Even in colleges that are not specifically Christian, there were revivals and awakenings growing. Even a place as desperately dark as Ohio State. So
you're digging your hole.
Yeah, I'm just kidding. Ohio.
People don't email Fred and me.
No.
We didn't say this. If you live in Ohio. And
I heard nothing.
I'm joking, dear listeners.
Yeah.
I'm joking.
All right. You're listening to Today's Issues on American Family Radio. Fred, what's your next story?
Well, what's different in this administration from Trump's first administration, he has a team of people that are very good when they're invited on to these ABC, NBC. They know how to handle themselves. And I'll tell you what, Vice President J.D. Vance, boy, he is really good. Now, on the weekend, Vice President J.D. Vance.
He's from Ohio, by the way.
That's right.
Great state.
And went to Ohio State University.
It's a great school.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
So apologies to J.D. Vance from Ed.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm sure he's listening.
Yes. But J.D. Vance was on CBS's Face the Nation, and he faced down the host of the program saying, hey, you guys promised that grocery prices would go down. When are we going to see that? Yeah. So have a listen to what J.D. Vance had to say about that. Cut number 9.
Prices are going to come down, but it's going to take a little bit of time, right? The president has been president for all of 5 days. One of the main drivers of increased prices under the Biden administration is that we had a massive increase in energy prices. Donald Trump has already taken multiple executive actions that are going to lower energy prices, and I do believe that means consumers are going to see lower prices at the pump and at the grocery store.
We're going to see a lot of this. I read a lot of Associated Press stuff. And the Associated Press, here's the modus operandi. We're going to go out and find somebody who disagrees with Trump.
Yeah.
They are going to become the lead story. Instead of what it was with the Biden administration, the mainstream media was out writing press releases.
Yeah.
What wonderful things the Biden administration is doing. What you're going to see now, folks, and just a heads up on this, you're going to see from the mainstream media, they'll find somebody who disagrees with what Trump is doing. They will become the story.
Because it's really the opinion of a Associated Press.
Oh, absolutely.
But they want to protect their journalistic integrity. So
Yes.
we'll say what we want to say by finding the people out there who agree with what we think.
Yes, and you're going to see that over and over again. By the way, in the same interview, J.D. Vance was asked by the CBS's Face the Nation host, Margaret Brennan, over whether or not immigrants, the U.S. Being deported, are they being vetted or not? Here's his response.
Left literally at the airport this week were thousands of Afghans, who some of whom had worked with the United States government and were promised to come here. When you talked to us in August, you said, I don't think we should abandon anybody who's been properly vetted and helped us. Do you stand by that?
Well, Margaret, I don't agree that all these immigrants or all these refugees have been properly vetted. In fact, we know that there are cases of people who allegedly were properly vetted and then were literally planning terrorist attacks on our country. And now that we know that we have vetting problems with a lot of these refugee programs, we absolutely cannot unleash thousands of unvetted people into our country.
These people
it's
are
not
vetted.
good.
These people are vetted.
Just like the guy who planned a terrorist attack in Oklahoma a few months ago, he was allegedly properly vetted.
It wasn't clear if he was radicalized when he got here or while he was living here.
I don't really
But
care, Margaret. I don't want that person in my country, and I think most Americans agree with me.
Listen, that's that kind of hostility that the Trump administration, this time they're expecting it and prepped for it. And I agree, J.D. Vance did a great job there. He knew what he wanted to say and had some good comebacks. But that's not honest journalism. What the Trump administration is going to be going through after 4 years of shilling for the Biden administration, softball questions, nothing like the tenacity with which she was interviewing the vice president of the United States. You never saw any of that unless it was from Peter Doocy or someone from the Fox network. There were maybe a few. But the vast majority of the mainstream media just gave them all a free ride.
By the way, while we're on J.D. Vance, he marched and spoke at the March for Life.
Yes.
On what day was it?
Friday.
Friday.
Yeah.
Friday. And there was a picture of him holding up a sign, said, I am the pro-life generation.
Yeah.
It was great to see. And I didn't hear his talk. But he said something to the effect, we need more babies.
Yes.
Huh?
Yeah.
But the fact that Vice President Vance would go to the March for Life and march and speak was a way of the Trump-Vance administration thanking the pro-life voters, I should say, because a lot of people vote on that issue.
Right.
And
single issue voters.
Yeah, the big voting bloc. And but it was a way for President Trump and Vice President Vance to stay engaged with the pro-life community and to say show a show of appreciation for the voters that came out to cast their ballot for Trump Vance. And so that was good to see. Did you see the guys see that picture?
I
sent
saw
it around.
I did see the picture. This is unusual for anyone, president or vice president, to show up at one of these marches, March for Life. Usually they avoid it.
Yeah.
Or they send a message.
Too controversial.
Yes.
Yes.
Good on J.D. Vance.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And Trump spoke to the group, too, now by video.
By video, yeah.
Because Trump was busy traveling to North Carolina
right.
and California.
Yeah. And Trump did personally speak at the March for Life a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Yes.
He was the first president ever to do so in person.
Yeah.
In person. So, anyway, good for him and good for the Trump-Vance team there. It was good to see the Vice President of the United States out with the group that was in Washington.
And I like the sign.
Yeah.
Listen, J.D. Vance is not that old. To me, he represents.
How old is he? Is he like 40? How old is he? Look it up.
40s at most.
I thought
You mean look it up?
39. Brent's going to look it up. He's 40. Okay.
Yep.
He's 40. So I like the fact that there are still a lot of young people who are willing to take a stand for life, and they're not ashamed of it, and we saw that with J.D. Vance. Good on him.
40 years old.
Well, and Pete Hegseth, too, is very young.
Yeah.
And I tell you what, it's going to be an exciting period just to go back to Pete Hegseth, what he plans to do in the military. And going to the abortion, the pro-abortionists already are saying, you know, what's going to happen, because under the woke policies for our military, it included military member paying for abortions.
Yeah.
Even if they had to go out of the state where they were based. The taxpayers of America were paying for that.
Right.
That's the kind of thing that's going to end also.
Weren't the Biden administration also paying for sex change?
Yes.
For quote unquote transitions for
yes
soldiers who wanted to transition. The bizarre nature of what we saw under the Biden administration. It is I just said this morning, I am physically relieved. I mean, because we are constantly being, I guess, vexed is a biblical word, vexed at what was going on day after day after day coming from the Biden administration, and the leftists and the cultural Marxists constantly assaulted by this craziness, and now we do see a shift and a return to normalcy, which I hope lasts at least 4 years, but maybe this is a permanent turning point.
Well, it's also happening in corporate America too. You know,
Target. Look what Target did.
Yeah, let's talk about that. I was surprised. You know, there's a bunch of companies, Walmart, some of the other big companies, all said we're getting rid of our DEI programs.
Right.
All right. On Friday, Target, which is, I would say, run by a very left-wing ideology.
Based in Minnesota, Minneapolis, and
yes.
St. Paul.
And I think our listeners are very familiar with what AFA has had to say about men and women's changing rooms
right.
and all of that. But on Friday, Target announced that it is getting rid of its DEI programs. And conservative activist Robbie Starbuck, who's been very involved in pressuring corporations to get rid of their DEI programs, he responded to that. Cut number 11.
Target was put on notice at the end of November that we were coming for them when we were able to flip the woke policies at Target. Knowing that a story was coming, Target executives wisely got together and figured out how to get rid of some of these woke policies. So the Target Corporation is no longer going to be participating in the HRC CEI scoring system. And not only that, but they will not have merchandise marketed to kids for Pride going forward. Number 2, Target is announcing an end to their 3-year DEI goals. Change number 3, they are concluding their racial equity action and change initiatives for 2025 and beyond. Change number 4, employee resource groups are going to be expected to be focused on the core business, development, and mentorship, not wokeness. Change number 5, they will be reevaluating all of their corporate partnerships to ensure they are directly connected to their business. And last but not least, they are going to be evolving their supplier diversity to a supplier team where everything's on merit. It's not about giving preferential treatment to any, quote, diverse suppliers. It's just going to be who's the best supplier, the way that every business should be run.
You may have missed it right off the top of his list there. He said they're not going to participate in the HRC. That's the Human Rights Campaign. The Human Rights Campaign has had this list out there.
It's called the Equality Index.
Yes. And you're a good guy if you came on that list, if you did all the right things for the Human Rights Campaign, which is the nation's largest pro-homosexual organization. What Target is saying, we're not even going to participate in that anymore. We're not interested. This is huge for an organization that's still, let's face it, they're fairly left in their ideology as a corporation. But it is amazing what's going on. There's a revolution going on in this country right now. And it's got the left's head spinning.
Well, that's, to me, is the biggest announcement, was not participating in the Human Rights Campaign Equality Index. And what that means is that Human Rights Campaign would give a 100% rating if you were doing all the things they had listed, and they send a questionnaire to these corporations, and they answer, and they get scored. So you could be down to 0% or 100%. Or somewhere in between. To me, that's huge, because the DEI thing they're backing out of, you could look at that and say, well, that's a money saver. So they're taking political cover with the Trump administration and saving themselves some money, but not doing HRC's bit, that's even more telling.
Yeah. All right. So let's see. We've had good news, and more good news.
Yes. Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. We'll see what.
I'll take it.
Yes.
Huh? All right. We will be back in 5 minutes with more of Good News Today's Issues.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio.
You're aware of how important it is to stay engaged in America's culture war. One way American Family Association helps you to do that is through action alerts. Here's how it works. Once or twice a week, we'll email you about matters critical to America's families, and we'll offer ways to take action. Visit afa.net today and tap the Action Alert sign-up button.
This is American Family Radio, a listener-supported ministry of the American Family Association.
American Family News, I'm Rusty P. President Trump is taking aim at the IRS, claiming it was weaponized to hurt Americans making less than $400,000 per year. Edward Lawrence at the White House with more.
The IRS under the Biden administration had struggled to find a way, made limited progress in figuring out how to audit less people in that income bracket. They increased the number of agents, so there were across-the-board increases in the number of audits. President Trump had an idea of what to do with the new workers hired under the Biden administration. Listen.
We're in the process of developing a plan to either terminate all of them or maybe we'll move them to the border.
So an Inspector General report in 2024 found that audits on taxpayers making less than $400,000 a year consistently accounted for more than 90% of all audits between fiscal year 2019 and fiscal year 2023.
U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth briefly spoke to reporters on his first official day at the Pentagon this morning. Secretary Hegseth calling it an honor to serve in the role, adding he's ready to fulfill many of President Trump's top priorities, such as securing the U.S. southern border.
We've helped move forward troops, put in more barriers, and also to ensure mass deportations, support of mass deportations in support of the president's objective. That is something the Defense Department absolutely will continue to do.
President Trump signing an executive order reinstating service members removed from the military for refusing to get the COVID-19 shot. Louisiana Republican Senator John Kennedy says the president did the right thing.
There were a lot of younger people who said, you know, this is a government vaccine, at least government funded, and they don't completely trust the government. Imagine that. And on principle, they said, we don't want to take the vaccine.
Rain brought some relief for those battling wildfires in Southern California, but it also brought new concerns. William Lajeunesse is in Malibu, California with more.
Entering this weekend, there was a high likelihood of flash flooding. That, for the most part, didn't happen. Not to say there weren't problems, especially in burn areas. We're in Malibu. When you have fire, it destroys the vegetation. That takes out the roots that hold the soil, right? Number two, the fire forms kind of a crust along the top of the soil, and that it's like a plastic film, and literally when you mix the water with this ash, it literally is like wet cement and will go down and obviously drain the concern into the ocean, right? So we did see mudslides in Topanga, Malibu Canyon, Sycamore Canyon, a lot of road closures.
This week is National School Choice Week. Bronson Woodruff has more.
Will Estrada is senior counsel for Homeschool Legal Defense Association, or HSLDA. He said in an interview with AFN, this is an exciting year for school choice.
One of the first things is homeschooling is really the ultimate in school choice of parents being able to make the choice.
Private school, charter school, or Estrada's favorite, homeschool.
With the growth of homeschooling post-pandemic, it's really been incredible to just see where we've come from, where homeschooling used to be illegal. As far back as 1994, homeschool parents in Michigan and in Texas were facing prison time, and look how far we've come.
Estrada referenced a Supreme Court case that'll be 100 years old this coming June 1st called Pierce versus Society of Sisters. He explained it's a landmark case that ruled a child is not a mere creature of the state.
And that was, of course, one of those earth-shattering Supreme Court decisions that really strengthened and built the foundation of parental rights of where it is today. So marking the 100th year anniversary and, of course, marking School Choice Week, there's really nothing that speaks to school choice better than parents deciding to homeschool their children at home.
He said there will be events across the nation this week.
If you go to National School Choice Week, you can download the signature yellow scarf. Everyone kind of does it differently. The private schools, when they mark school choice, they've got one way of doing it. Homeschool parents, I think there are going to be events all around the country for them.
Estrada said at HSLDA they've been busy continuing to advance school choice in all 50 states. I'm Bronson Woodruff.
On Wall Street, the S&P 500 fell 1.7% this morning. Big tech stocks took some of the heaviest losses, with NVIDIA down 14.4%, and they're dragging the NASDAQ down 2.8%. The Dow Jones Industrial Average was down just 54 points. More news online at afn.net and the AFN mobile app. I'm Rusty P.
Streaming.afa.net has now become AFA Stream, and you can find it at stream.afa.net. You see, we removed the letters ing. Our experts have determined that eliminating those 3 keystrokes, multiplied over hundreds of thousands of AFA Stream visits, could reduce the national debt and maybe increase the gross domestic product. AFA Stream, formerly streaming.afa.net. Improvements to the economy are purely theoretical. Today's Issues continues on AFR with your host, Tim Wildman, president of the American Family Association.
Hey, welcome back, everybody, to Today's Issues on the American Family Radio Network. Thanks for listening to AFR. Hope you're having a nice Monday. It's Monday, January the 27th, 2025. Tim Wildman with Evan Tagliano. And joining us now in studio is Steve Paisley Jordahl.
Good morning, everybody.
How you doing, Steve?
I'm well. I am well. It's a good day here in Mississippi.
Well, listen, I'm looking forward to what we got ahead here for much of the country. A little warming up coming up.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm ready.
Let's see what we got here, fellers. Well, for us here, it's going to be mid-60s pretty much the rest of the week. I'll take that.
Yeah.
Every day, all day. What you got, Ed?
Well, yeah, and no rain until Thursday. So I've switched. I was complaining about the cold.
Yeah.
And soon I'll be complaining about the rain. So it's just hard to make me happy.
Yeah, Ed, here comes that rainy day feeling again.
But it is warming up. You mentioned we were talking one day at the end of last week, I think. It's nice. The day's starting to lengthen a little bit.
Yeah. Springtime will be here.
Yeah.
Before you know it, we'll be.
The purple flowers will be out.
Yes.
You got.
The
dogwood
clover. You're talking about? Oh, you're talking about on trees.
On trees.
Yeah.
We got
dogwoods.
A certain tree here that sprouts purple flowers for like a week in the spring, and then it goes away.
It's a red bud, Ed. Steve.
Very pretty.
You don't have red buds out west?
A lot of aspen, a lot of redwoods.
Yeah, well, these red buds are purple, but people call them red. I don't understand it.
I had aspen one time, and I just used an inhaler for a while, and it helped.
I bet it did.
I did cure that right away.
What's the popular tree out in Colorado where you used to live?
Aspen. And here's an interesting fact about aspen.
They have flowers on aspen or no?
Yeah, I think they do, but they're mostly known for their colors when they change. The leaves change colors in the fall, and they're just spectacular. Here's the thing about aspens. An aspen grove. It is perhaps the largest single organism in the entire world
because they're connected.
They are. An aspen will spread roots, and then it'll pop up another tree from one of its roots, and they're all connected. The whole grove, the whole mountainside is one big connected.
And you pick on one aspen, they're all coming for you.
Yeah, I know. It's
that is really inspirational.
Well, I'm glad I can bring some inspiration.
So if you from one aspen springs them all.
Oh, I
right?
like that. Yeah.
Is this? Can you? Wow. From one aspen springs them all. We're trying to think of the second verse. that song right there.
There's a
actually
song.
And I want you, as a pastor, I want you to find a spiritual analogy, something you can use as an illustration for.
I'll get to work on that. I'm not doing it right off the top of my head.
Either that or you can use
that's how I get myself in trouble.
Either that or you can use it as a Trivia Friday question.
Yeah.
All right, what's
Yeah,
your
that's
first?
not a bad idea.
What do you got first out of the shoot here?
All right.
Steve?
I know you guys talked a lot about the all the executive orders the president has been writing. Well, one of those was, and I wasn't able to listen to the whole first hour. Did you guys talk about the J6 prisoners getting released?
No.
No, you go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah,
with that story.
we need to cover this.
Let's talk about that. One of his first acts of executive orders he signed was to get all of the January 6th prisoners out of prison to commute or to pardon their sentences. And
all of them? All of them, right?
All of them, yes. All of them that have been convicted.
Okay, listen, he did the right thing there. I'll just interject this. I know you got more to this story. I was talking with somebody, well, with multiple people who were seeking my wisdom before the, right before Trump was sworn in.
Yeah.
And I said, you know what he needs to do with respect to the January 6th prisoners? He needs to let them all out in one fell swoop, as it were, and not look back. Because if you get into parsing and you get into, okay, well, we're going to talk, we're going to investigate Bill's, what happened and John on February the 29th, and we'll get back to you on whether you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because listen, I know that there was a few confrontations that involved physical violence against police. I don't know. I didn't see all the videotape.
Right.
But even President Trump was asked about this, and he said, well, these people have been in prison, most of them for like 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
So they've already served time.
Right.
So, I think if you'd have got into, like I said, trying to distinguish between between this person and that person and what they did and get a testimony from this person, it would just be a mess.
Right.
I think it would just be a mess. And there's no downside for Trump to do this. He's not running again for office.
Right.
He's not going to get impeached over this. So I think that's what he saw, and he said, let them all out. That's what he said.
Some of them haven't even had trials.
Pardon them all.
So now you're going to say, okay, they need to have their trial. They've been held without a trial unconstitutionally for 4 years. Now we got to go ahead and have their trial so I can decide whether I can pardon them. I agree with you.
Don't you think he did the right thing by just pardoning them all?
It would take years.
Get it behind us?
Yeah.
Get it behind us. Go ahead, Steve.
Absolutely. To add to that, I think a case could be made that it was total political prosecution anyway. Yes, maybe crimes were committed and they maybe should have been.
They shouldn't have gone in there, and everybody knows it.
But,
I've heard some of the J6.
They were let in. They were.
I don't care.
In. Yeah,
I don't care. I got a brain. I know I'm not supposed to go into the Capitol building. I knew. So that's not an excuse for me.
Yeah.
Some people say, yeah, they let them in. Well, they let them in. They shouldn't have gone in. Shouldn't have been down there doing that in that close to the Capitol. That's Tim talking here. Okay.
That's a fair.
But I would just say this: if you see the videos, yes, there are a few of the videos that the media shows over and over and over again about them,
smashing.
Yeah, but most of the vast majority of these people were just walking around the rotunda.
Yeah.
And walking around, you know what I'm saying? They were just like
they were staying within the velvet ropes.
If they had really wanted to hold a coup, they'd have brought some weapons with them.
Right.
And they'd have held hostages, and they'd have really done some damage. They were just people who were emotional. They let their emotions get away with them on a momentary basis, and it was something that shouldn't have been done. But as I said earlier, everybody knows that's got sense that the punishment didn't fit the crime, and then we begin to hear all these horror stories about the Washington Gulag that they were held in, and it was just a terrible situation altogether for what happened to those folks. And as you said, the documentation, they didn't get trials.
Yeah.
It was terrible. So he did the right thing.
I think he did too. And I wanted you mentioned the horrors that they suffered. The dad that you're going to hear was not identified in the journalist source that I am using, so I don't know his name, but he's talking about his son, and I don't have the name in here, but he called it diesel prosecution, something like that. They would move these prisoners around every 6 months or so that they would try to move them as far away from their families as they possibly
This is
could.
bad, what we're about to hear.
If we need a new J6 panel, which I don't.
Well, they have one. Republicans have one.
Okay, then that's the kind of story you need to feel what happened to these folks.
I agree. So this is an unnamed dad, but I'd like you to hear what he had to say. Cut 12.
When they first picked my son up on January 16, 2021, they scooped him up and then they started taking him from prison to prison. Son spent 202 days down in the bowels of the D.C. prison. The conditions there are so egregious. He was actually sifting water through a sock because there's so much rust in the bottom of that prison that you can't drink the water. And so, they would lay him on a cot. They had lights. This was like Vietnam, where they had lights on all the time. You had 2 blankets. They call them suicide blankets. And just laid him on a basically a block, and you didn't even have a mattress. So and then what they do, as soon as you start to get communications with your attorneys and your family, they scoop you up and they take you to another prison. And then so you'll be there for 2 weeks. You're usually a week to 2 weeks. You're in solitary, where they're transitioning you into the new prison, and then you're there for, maybe 3 to 5 months. They ship you out again. When you can't talk to your attorneys, you can't hardly even talk to your family, and you can't possibly, make a defense. And then when you do get your attorneys, you talk to your attorneys, and then they scoop you up and they move you to the prison. All your notes and stuff, they take. So they know exactly what your defense is. It's like playing cards with your opponent looking over your back and looking at your hand. It's impossible to win.
Who was that, and where did you get that clip?
This was from Not the Bee. Actually, there's a Twitter account called Insurrection Barbie that gives, a fairly reliable account. She had.
That was a dad of. It's what he said. My son,
yeah,
right?
A dad of one of the J6 prisoners.
Listen, that's outrageous.
Yeah,
I don't know how much of that went on, but of course, Sandy Rios, our own Sandy Rios, has been covering what's happened to the J6ers and what's been happening to them from the outset. She's done a great job. Whenever we've talked to her or she's sent around to leadership stuff that she's found out, it just blows your mind that this is communist tactics. This is dictatorship tactics. Yes, we know you have a constitutional right to talk to a lawyer, but you know what? We're going to circumvent that by moving you to another prison. Now you've got to get another lawyer and start all over. And then for them taking your notes, I hope there are people within the Biden administration who go to prison. And I hope a lot of these people.
You mean for doing this to these people?
For doing this stuff. This is clearly illegal, and I hope that they are given a fair trial, obviously. And I hope these people are able to win lawsuits. I know that comes out of everyone's pockets, but elections have consequences. And what the Biden Department of Justice did is tyrannical.
There is so much that we do not know about this whole thing.
We're going to know more in the coming days.
I
don't
think
you think so?
I think so. How much were the feds involved in this J6? How much did the J6 Select Committee hide things and lie to the American people?
Some of that stuff they deleted.
Yeah.
I mean, there is a report that's available but there were communications within the committee
that they illegally
deleted.
Yeah.
And so some of this stuff maybe we won't find out, but I hope we find out enough to maybe have some legal.
Well, all right. You're listening to Today's Issues. That's the name of this show on the American Family Radio Network. I'm Tim with Ed and Steve. We thank you for listening. If you want to send us an email, go to comments@afr.net, comments@afr.net. Go ahead, Steve.
Our mainstream media has not learned a whole lot in the 4 years that they were covering, the 8 years that they covered Trump and then Biden. ABC, CBS, and NBC spent 46 minutes covering the Trump pardons of the January 6th prisoners. They spent a total of 3 minutes on Biden pardoning his family.
So what was the give those minutes?
Who's this now? Who's this?
The big three: ABC, CBS, NBC. 46 minutes covering the J6 release pardons. 3 minutes covering the Biden pardons.
That's disappointing.
Not surprising
because
though, right?
I'm shocked.
Yeah. Just
listen.
I don't know. These guys need to get it together. Don't they, Ed?
Well, okay. See, now you make me laugh. I want to be angry, Tim.
Yeah.
I want to be angry. It's hard for me to be angry. But this period of time in the 2000s, but especially the last 4 or 5 years, maybe the last 10 years because of what happened starting with Trump, this is going to go – and the news media, this is going to go down maybe as the death knell for the legacy media.
Yeah, you're right about that. Their viewership is way, way down. I'm talking about the CNN's about to go out of business.
Well,
they're reshuffling there. MSNBC's
for sale.
They've got 13 viewers.
Yeah,
they're down spread out across the country. MSNBC, I'm talking about. Fox is doing really well, but I don't know. You got some others like Newsmax and others that I guess are doing okay.
Most people are getting their news from social media these days. So the whole landscape, in addition to the bias, the whole landscape of the media has changed over the last 10 years. And to that point, I wanted you to hear what CNN's Kate Bolduan.
Kate who?
Bolduan, Bolduan, Bolduan. I don't know. I've not heard of her before this, but she was on her show with Harry Enton. Harry Enton is the guy that brings all the stats to the polling to CNN.
Yeah.
And he'll bring it good or bad. I want you to hear what he says about the Trump approval rating and then what Kate Bolduan's reaction is. Cut 15.
So it was so interesting to me that Donald Trump's first net approval rating of his second term is higher than his entire first term. And I was interested, has that ever happened? Has the second term net approval rating in the first month, have you ever had a higher rating than any net approval rating during the entire first term? Donald Trump is the only...
I have a really hard time believing this.
This is 100% true. I went back. I love spreadsheets. Donald Trump is the first guy ever whose net approval rating in the first month of his second term is higher than any rating that he had in an entire first term, Kate Baldwin. This is true. I don't make stuff up. The numbers are the numbers.
The numbers are the numbers.
He called her by her full name.
Kate Baldwin.
Kate Baldwin. Listen to me, Kate Baldwin.
What's her last name?
I guess it's pronounced Baldwin. Baldwin. Baldwin.
Boy, she really turned on the high pitch there.
Yes, I have a hard time believing this.
Let's listen to that again. That was her octave way up.
Yeah, let's scratch the let's rub our nails on the blackboard again.
All right,
go ahead.
Calling all dogs.
So it was so interesting to me that Donald Trump's first net approval rating of his second term is higher than his entire first term. And I was interested, has that ever happened? Has the second term net approval rating in the first month, have you ever had a higher rating than any net approval rating during the entire first term? Donald Trump is the only...
I have a really hard time believing this.
This is 100% true.
She went full... Isn't that soprano?
That is soprano.
I don't know.
Steve knows about those music. Those music, different octaves.
She'd be a first soprano.
But
she was on that show?
What's that?
She was on that show?
No, it was different. We're talking about different sopranos.
Right.
I'm just kidding.
Not the Italian sopranos.
I didn't watch the show.
Okay, so...
very violent.
Anyway, good for... that's interesting. Well, President Trump's rating is, I think, 55%. Is that right? Approval rating? Which what the gentleman there was pointing out was that it's higher than it was any time in his first 4 years of office.
Of course, that means that people were really sick of Joe Biden.
Yes.
That's why.
Yes. Listen, President Trump, I'm not taking anything away from him whatsoever, but I'm saying he did benefit from a terrible candidate being opposed to him.
2 in a row.
Biden and Kamala Harris. The Democrats couldn't have done worse, in their choices to run against President Trump. So, but head to head, he won, and I think that now you're seeing with this 55% approval rating that among the general public out there that the American people were ready for Trump to come into office and do what he said he's going to do to restore some common sense to our nation. Huh? Don't you think?
No, absolutely.
Also, last week, did you see what he did last week? As I say, everything is just dizzying how much good stuff
Probably
he's doing.
missed some stuff. What?
Well, the gender.
Oh, yeah.
Talk about that.
There's 2. He's as far as the federal government is concerned,
right.
There are 2 genders.
He issued an executive order about this.
Yes, and that means The gender assigned at birth
right
is your gender.
That's what
you don't get to switch even with the two genders.
No.
But that is a common sense executive order. The
Yes.
federal government and here's the thing. If J.D. Vance, I'm assuming that he would be
Who's
next
a male?
in line.
He's a
Yes.
male.
If he's going to be next in line to run after Trump gets through, you could potentially have 12 straight years of common sense governance, and what a breath of fresh air
Not
that
straight
would be.
years.
Huh?
Oh, yes, you're right. If he won 2 terms.
Yes.
Talking about J.D. Vance.
J.D. Vance.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, that almost got lost in the shuffle of all that was going on last week.
Yeah. So, I've always wondered if you go to, if you go to buy an airline ticket, if I go to American Airlines or Delta or somewhere like that, and I buy an airline ticket online, which I do 3 or 4 times a year usually, and you get to a point where they say, I need your name, your birthday, and all this stuff, and then they say, are you what sex are you? And then they have M and F, and then they got something else to pick from.
Well, I think you can
Other.
usually you can say other or
X.
or don't want to answer.
Okay, here's my
Prefer not
here's
to
my
answer.
point of bringing this
Don't
up.
know.
Here's my point of bringing this up. I'm assuming that the airline is asking for this information for their manifest, right?
Yeah.
Manifest being a list of who's on the airplane, because that's a law, but also in case something happens, the
Yes.
plane crashes or something, they need to know who's on there, right?
Right.
And so, why else would you want to know what sex somebody is when they're signing up to be? Then when they're registering for if they're buying an airline ticket.
Yeah.
Do you want to answer that question? I don't know.
Well, I just think they want the information for identification purposes. Not only, that's probably the major reason, if there is a crash.
I have somewhere I'm going with this.
Yeah,
when you get
or
through
if someone causes trouble. And you say, well, seat 18A was
right.
Ed Vitagliano, and he bolted off the plane with someone's purse. We're looking for a male.
Okay.
6 foot.
Okay, here's my point bringing this up. If you're going to have male, female, and then you can put some other sexual identity or what do you call it, gender identity in as another anything other than male and female, then the whole thing is worthless. The whole thing's worthless because there isn't anything besides male and female. And if you're going to have that on there for identification purposes, you can't have somebody saying, today I'm choosing to be a dog or something. Yeah. I'm not a male or a female today. I'm something else. Well, that doesn't fit the that doesn't what am I trying to say? Fit the purpose of asking the question in the first way, male or female, when you sign up to get your airline ticket. So just do away with the question altogether.
Political correctness is worthless. So to your point, if the police in Rochester, New York,
yes.
issue an all points bulletin,
yes.
they're looking for a bank robber,
right?
And they have the name, and they identify it's a 6'3" male,
right?
But they identify as a female. The police have to say, we're looking for a 6'3" female. And no one on God's green earth is going to be you're going to go, well, it can't be that guy who's running with the bag of money because it's supposed to be a woman. That's a guy. So
nobody does that.
It's worthless.
Yeah, it's worthless.
Yeah.
Absolutely, it's worthless. Absolutely. All right, Steve, go ahead.
All right, just in closing here, Ed, if I was to tell you that my favorite player on the Vancouver Canucks was Elias Pettersson,
yes,
what would your first question to me be?
My first question?
Yeah. What clarifying question would you need to ask me?
Why is he your favorite player?
That might be a good question.
Yeah.
No, which one? Because there are two Elias Petterssons
on the Canucks.
The same name, same spelling, not related, both from Finland, I guess, but
well, I know the Elias Pettersson I'm thinking of is a really good player. I've never heard of the second guy.
The guy named Elias Pettersson?
Do both of them identify as males?
Yes. And so I don't know what the announcer does. Pettersson passes to Pettersson.
I know, yeah.
Well, we have 2 Lindholms I say we, the Boston Bruins.
Yeah.
We have
their first names
2 Lindholms.
Right?
Their first names are different. And one's a defenseman, one's a center.
Tune us in tomorrow, ladies and gentlemen, for a second edition of Inside Hockey. Here
That's right.
With Ed and Steve.
None of that football stuff.
Football's for weenies, isn't it, Ed?
No, I can't go that far.
Try playing football on ice, like hockey players do. All right, thank you, Steve.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Ed, Fred,
Dr. Andy Miller,
and Brent Creeley, our producer. Thank you for listening, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow. Keep listening to AFR.
Hello, everyone. Tim Wildman here with American Family Association and American Family Radio. Hey, our tours for 2025, our spiritual heritage